Hello. Yeah. Hi everyone. So we'll be starting now. So Chetan, I'll just introduce you to everyone. So we have Nihal, who's from IoT Bangalore, who's the founder of IoT Bangalore. We have Tarun, who's from ICRC Geneva. I guess you already know Sanjana. And then we have Stan, who's a participant from the team 3D PT. And we can start now.
Hello, can everyone hear me here?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Chetan. Thanks so much for
Hi,
this.
sorry about this technology goof up. I have no idea how things are because I'm doing it off my phone here. But I hope you guys can see and everything is going on.
Yeah, it's
So
perfect.
this is a first for me, and I just thought that maybe we could just spend a minute, if a minute or two in the beginning, if everyone could just maybe in 30 seconds just tell me one key challenge that they're thinking of, and so as we have the conversation here, I can probably try and address some of them in a more meaningful manner. We'll of course have a Q&A at the end, but I could set the context of what people are seeing, since there has been many of these, and set that area. So if someone could start and maybe just in a few seconds just tell me what would be some of their key challenges, or one key challenge that they would like to try and see how we could address, then I'll try and see along the conversation what we can do.
Um, so I'm going to go. Hi. Hi, Chetan. So I'm Sanjana, the one who's been spamming you. But I've been thinking, I took the webinar on term sheet basics for some of the teams, and the constant feedback that comes in is how do you balance your finances when you want to invest in R&D to innovate and improve your product versus scaling? Because obviously you have a small pot of money. So which is more important in the longer term and in the shorter term, and what's the best way to figure that balance out?
Okay, very valid.
Hi Chetan, this is Nihal. So one question that keeps coming up quite often for companies that deal with hardware is how do you manage your inventory effectively? There's always this balance to be maintained between having something on hand to be able to sell it when the order comes in, as opposed to not being able to forecast it, especially in the initial years. The first 2-3 runs where you don't really have historic data to look at also.
Okay.
Chetan, this is Tarun. I'm from the ICRC. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, these are kind of questions for us a little bit. The first question is that I think when we talk to most of the groups, I mean, the biggest challenge they're facing is trying to understand how they might distribute, do distribution of products, and any advice that you have there. The second thing is that, as ICRC, we are a prospective buyer, and one of the things that we're willing to fund for things, for prototypes which are kind of that we think that we may be able to use, we're going to, prototype some kind of testing phase, and I'm just sort of wondering if you have any advice on how to actually design that testing phase for people.
Okay. All right. So I'll try and weave that from what was there anyone else who had something before we continue?
For international sellers like myself, what are some of the challenges of just trying to sell overseas? Because obviously I'd be selling or licensing my product from the United States to India or to the ICRC. What are some ways to work with that? I'm new to business in general, but just how do I work across continents like that?
Okay, great. All right, so I think what I could probably start is maybe looking at some of these questions that you had in a broader context and see how we take it from there. I think the first question was really around looking at R&D versus scaling, and I think the whole process of term sheets and investments and everything else. And I think if I were to look at that space in general, you know, having done, from my experience, has always been helpful to, you know, get the technology proven, look at a very small customer base that can really, you can get really acceptance, you know, create one key differentiator that allows you to have that, and then see how could this business, you know, really be scalable. Because as investors are coming in, one of the key things they're going to see is, you know, what is, you know, can this something go 10x, 100x as a business grows, and so trying to understand that now, and so therefore often when you talk of R&D versus scaling, sometimes technology is required to make it enable it to scale, and sometimes it's purely just capital or distribution network or something that's required to scale it. And so therefore it's hard for me to, you know, I mean, I'd like to understand more of your context, but I think I would see scalable business as, can the core technology scale? Can my distribution model at a very low investment initially scale? And see what that right balance is of where the investment goes. And often it's a combination of the two. I don't think you should not spend on R&D anymore. I think the balance changes, initially probably higher on R&D, and as the business matures, maybe higher on scale from the market perspective with a smaller amount on R&D. And as a startup, I think you need to have that flexibility, because you may have certain perspective today which may be very different a year from today. And so therefore with your investors, with it, you put down certain things that are very definitive, but the others you say, listen, it's possible that I may want to do A or B, and that's totally acceptable too, because you're not aware of that. And so it's not always that you have every answer what you want to do a year from today or a couple of years from today. And I think that's okay if you've gotten that level with your potential investors to have that discussions around this area. In terms of looking at you know, they talked about the inventories and what it should be maintained. I think an important aspect what I've found is that even as a company is small, certain things that you would do as a culture, certain things you do become the culture of the organization. And maybe you don't have the automation and everything, but if you think that you'll be big one day and you always have that perspective and everything you do is in line with that, your likelihood to have a much more structured approach. So the systems you would use, the processes you would use, the discipline you would use, so simple things from, you know, BOM management, change management, you know, you've changed your design, what's the impact on my inventory, what you would do with it, how would you support customers if you change. Even if initially these simple processes were all laid on paper, which when became large enough you automated, allows you to have a discipline from day one of what those criteria would be in setting up the organization. And I think that's very key in building the culture. And often when a company is changing from an R&D phase to an operation phase, the type of people and personalities are very technology oriented, and the operation mindset's very different. So this culture, bringing in an early stage, will enable probably to have a lot more right processes in place on this area. Now, when I also think of inventory, it goes back to technology and your philosophy. Are you thinking of high level of commonization of parts that go across your systems? Are you thinking of a just-in-time solution? Are you thinking of a combination of certain parts that are rapid prototyped with common parts that you put it together? Are you thinking of doing everything in-house or buying it outside? So what is your make or buy decisions that you would take in each component as you look at it on this area, and looking at 20% of your bill of material, which is going to cost you 80%, and seeing if that can be common across platforms and how you would look at it. So I think every business has a challenge as it doesn't know who its customers are and how it looks at scaling and inventory. But I think what is the inventory management philosophy goes back one step to what is your design philosophy, manufacturing philosophy, and therefore inventory philosophy. If you have several partners who are part of this process and they have a very short lead time in building up the solution you need as part of what you need, then you can run a much more tight system of just-in-time. And I think the philosophy initially would be, if you always think that way and say, okay, we will be a business that needs to be just-in-time, it will be very difficult in the early stages of the business. But what it does very soon is create a culture that you'll be inventory light from day one, and actually, or in the long term, probably meet your customer expectations much better. But you will have some hard times initially while the business has to mature. So maybe in the initial stages, you have a little higher stock to take care of that. But in general, I would look at a phase that in today's society, when logistics and everything are much easier, how do you from day one have a much higher, just-in-time philosophy? And that, of course, depends on the partners you have, the vendors, and the processes you use. And it would be hard for me to comment, but I can definitely go into more specifics as we think of this area. The distribution on products and looking at these aspects here. I think both when I look at the supply chain side on inventory and the distribution side, I think really selecting the right partners, having them see your vision and being very open with them, because sometimes initially it takes a long time of gestation, and being true to them and them buying into the bigger picture is very important, because as a startup you're going to go through a lot of challenges, and often if they understand the vision and they believe in that, then they will be with you as a true partner through the tough times that you're likely to see. So I think, therefore, that would be something that in my initial stages, starting up a company in the hardware space, but no one did anything on this and didn't believe you'd get volumes, or thought you were in some ways crazy. I felt that once they bought into the vision, it was a lot easier to have those conversations with them. And you'll be surprised that when you find like-minded people, how much easier it is. And so I think using your networks and stuff, the partners that you get initially, it should not be only about money. It should be a lot more beyond that, and a gut feel beyond the philosophy that you have that matches with you and your business. And I think that's more critical, because others may pour in money initially, but when things get tough, they're likely to back off on this area. And not to say that none of these guys are not there for money. They're all in there for money. But are they truly being your extensions of partners to grow the business with you? And that's what I think is very important as you look at the distribution side of this business. We talked a little bit about testing. I mean, I think one of the questions was on the testing side and how we do it. And I honestly need a little bit more context to comment on that. But in my thought or my experience, I've always given testing a very, very high priority, and did it two ways. One was a very strong level of internal testing of each aspect of the product, and two, a lot of initial consumer trials with smaller groups, which were very focus oriented to get feedback of the product at its early stages, and I think that I would say my maximum learning has come from these two areas, and the fact that if you can do this quickly and iterate, the more you can do this during the design phase becomes very important, and sometimes it's better to not wait to get everything ready and then go out, but do maybe 2 or 3 iterations during the process, so that when you're out there, there's no huge issue that has caught you off guard, and you've had a chance to address them through the product development cycle, as you've looked at such products. On the international selling part, I think things are much easier today. So if you're doing businesses in India, you would have an opportunity to licenses. There are royalties that you would get for each product sold. So the standard structure would be you would look at maybe an upfront fee if you're purely licensing it. You would look at a royalty stream that would come on a per product basis. And that would be a very common way that a lot of companies have done these, and these royalties can be between 5 to 8 years of the business, and depending on the type of businesses, in the order of 5 to 8% of the selling price of the product. There are taxations involved with this, which come on the Indian party, so you want to try and structure something that is mutually beneficial in a way, but there are enough entities in India that once you have that can structure that for you, and so the opportunities would be doing a joint venture with an organization that you would have royalties, or you would do something like just licensing it out through a technology agreement, which is much simpler and easier, and it could also include a development fee, it could include a upfront payment, and it include an ongoing royalty stream. So, so I think it's much harder in India than some other countries, but definitely doable to look at licensing the technology on this area. Certain businesses like this, I'm sure, do not even have the required approvals because if the amounts are below certain levels, then the approval process is automatic, and I would believe that all of this would come in the automatic approval process. So I just, for me, I think as I look at the operations side, and coming back to the questions that we had on do I spend money on R&D or scaling, or looking at the inventory side, or looking at all of these aspects here, honestly, you don't know what's actually right. I think you may be kind of sure of certain areas. So what I've often done at early stages of the business is fired a lot of bullets, and when I feel that they're going the right direction, and the ones that work, then you get out your cannon and fire it in a much larger way. So if the distribution wasn't working, you can try a direct model and try the distribution model and see which is more, and a regular distribution model, an online and an offline platform, and look at what's happening as a result of that, learn from that, and say, what, this seems to be working a lot better, and so therefore let me now invest in a much larger way in one area, right? Similarly, the questions on where should I spend R&D or scaling, it's if you can do small pilots and try out and see what works, and then do the larger investments. But do these very quick. These may be structured, tests which happen very fast, and they're a little more difficult to do in the hardware world than probably the software world, but they still can be done in a controlled manner, and that allows you to fail easily, that allows you to learn very quickly, and then when you really go out there, your investments, the bang for the buck you get can be very high. So again, this is a very broad area. I don't want to be probably continuously lecturing. I thought I'll keep it more interactive. Let's hear some other concerns, issues that you'd like me to talk to more about, and I can address them.
One of the this is Tarun again. First of all, I see that there's some new people who've joined the call. So when Chetan came, he said if you have any particular questions, if you can put them to him. So Mahmood, if you're there, and Androvan, if you're there, if you have any specific questions that you'd like Chetan to answer, do you want to have a go? Okay, while you think, maybe I'll just put in another question. Yeah, Mahmood, are you there?
Anand, do you have any questions from your side? Okay, Mahmood is typing his question. So his question is about licensing. Is it required the system to be patented?
I'm having a hard time hearing that. Would it be possible just to speak up a little?
He wants to know more about patenting and open source licensing. I guess his microphone isn't working.
I'm sorry. I just let me try and yeah. Can you just repeat that again, please?
Yeah. So he wants to know more about patenting, open source, and licensing. He wants to know the working of this.
You said open source versus licensing?
More on patenting, open source, and licensing.
Patenting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I do believe that if at a product level, it's very important at an early stage to look at the possibilities of patenting. And today, with the kind of searches you have, a lot of the search you can do yourself on a lot of the new websites within your areas and keywords to see what prior art is there. And are you potentially infringing on something, but also not only that, do you have an opportunity to patent something? The key on the patenting process would be that you've got to make sure you have put across before you've publicly demonstrated your product or published anything about it, you have the process of patenting it. So till you launch it, you have that time frame. And so it's very important that if you're thinking of doing it, that you do it before the launch. Once you've shown it, you cannot patent it. It doesn't work. If you've already done that in certain areas, then one way to protect it is publish a paper on it, publish something on it, which enables, therefore, someone else not to use that as prior art against you, but also it establishes the fact that, okay, others can use it, but it doesn't also cause me a problem as I think about it. But I would strongly recommend that in a lot of the new product development cycle, spend the extra time and effort in looking at, especially if you had some differentiated idea, in creating some patents, because finally that's what's going to give you differentiation in the marketplace. To start off with, at least file in India. You have an India file date. If you think your patent has a portfolio beyond the Indian geographies, if you're going to be selling into other countries, you can at least you have a time frame therefore to do it after you first filed it and use that. It's very expensive to go outside India to file, but if you believe there's an important differentiation in your technology and a market that can benefit it, then it would be good to look at filing it. There are also companies today, if there are costs, there are very high costs associated with filing, and you don't believe that you have the kind of funds to do it, can structure deals on the fact where they will probably support you in some of the patent stuff and maybe even find you a licensee partner in other countries if you really have a differentiated solution, and they make a business out of that. So it's possible that if you really created something very differentiated, you could look at this area. The open sourcing part, yes, I mean, the more I think you can look at an open source for whatever solution you're looking, will enable over time, a lot more players to come on board. And if you can use an open source solution, which for 90%, which is common, but 10% of that is added on the open source solution to give you a differentiated product, I think that's the best of both worlds. And if that can be patentable, then that's great, because then you are spending your effort and time on something that's only differentiated and not on things that you can get from someone else. So the more you can use open source, I would strongly recommend you. It doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. Use what's out there, see what the best is on there, and then from that, what you differentiate and spend your money and time on those aspects to look at it. As far as licensing, I think we briefly touched on it earlier. Licensing really works either for a very strong product defined by a patent that you may have, or a process that you have that is very differentiated, which could be patentable, or it's a secret recipe that you look at it. And so therefore, I would say the kind of thing that you're probably doing is more likely to be product-oriented, which means that the patent is very critical as this aspect. Sometimes it's not necessarily you may have a differentiated design that you can have someone else license it. But if it's easily copyable, then the license value is very less because anyone else can do it. But if there's a magical piece of hardware or software that sits on your open source, then you end up licensing that small bit of piece only, and that's without that the product doesn't have the right value. That would be a very strong licensing opportunity because it also then allows other parties to innovate on a lot of other aspects, but they still need your piece of hardware or software that really gets it to work and differentiates it. So that would probably be really the holy grail of how you could structure something if you're looking at a business that could be very scalable and very technology driven.
Would you use open source as more of a advertising point than a sales point? Because like I'm on Thingiverse and I've been getting some visibility from that, but I haven't been getting much business per se. So should I keep doing open source to maintain business, or basically free advertising?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have experience on that platform or that, but I think it's if you follow that philosophy as part of it, that is going to over time probably benefit you. Maybe not immediately, and like you rightly said, that it gives you a newer platform to look at. But in your particular case, I do not have experience in that. At a much broader level, I would say that it does make sense to continue.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because I was thinking, like, I've got some things up already open source, but for what I'm doing right now with my grips, those aren't published yet, so I'm still trying to decide whether to license or do something else to sell the item, so I'm just keeping it out of open source for right now.
Yeah, if there's a way that you can keep it open source, but people adding value gives you a way that you can build up and work around it in a collaborative manner that can give further differentiation. That may be a way also where you can use the community, the open source side, to give you an advantage. Again, I think that there's been very few places that has worked very successfully, but it's also possible that can happen. I think the communities today are very different than they were 10 years ago, and people are much more open to looking at this prospect. So is there a way that you can think of this business of open source that I have a piece, and if others build on it, I start to see real value when I take all of that and then add some of my proprietary stuff to it. And I couldn't have added the other modules without making it open source first. So is there a way that allows you to leverage and build the next stage, and then again you get back in something finally to differentiate it? For that, if you probably create certain structures or thought processes around how the open source would work or the opportunities would be, and get people to work around that, which are the new challenges, it could be a way to help you build something that you would like in the future, which you couldn't do yourself. I'm not sure if that's making sense, but
No, it is, because Ultimaker, the 3D printer company, is using that model. They have just released their new 3D printer based off all the open source building they have, and like they just had put on like a new nozzle system and some other improvements based on outside R&D done by the public through open source.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think you're very right. In certain areas that are new, where you have a lot of a community that's a very maker community, you know, and that's very innovative and likes to kind of do this in their spare time, and you know, has fun doing it, and you can engage with the community like that, that can leverage what you're doing. You know, that could be really good, and if it can, you can structure it in a way that enables it to be leveraged, then I think it has a lot of merit.
Yeah, just a comment from me on that one. You know, certainly there's a possibility. You started off with you know, looking at implements, you know, ways in which people could eat, and now you're looking at ways in which people could write. And you know, of course, there's a lot more that people will need to do. So I'm sure that there would be others who would kind of join in that process. I've just one other question. One of the things that we're facing is that many of the people who are coming to the you know, with their prototypes in position where they to
Tarun, I lost you there. I heard you for a little bit, but you said that when people bring a prototype to me, and after that I lost you. So could you please repeat that?
Tarun, can you hear us? I think so. Tarun is facing some issues with the network.
Yeah, so while we wait for Tarun to reconnect, any questions from any of the other participants? Any question related to business?
Any-
Related to
Yeah,
Link.
Anand, Nekram, any questions from your side?
I joined a little late, so I don't know what was discussed, but it's about patenting about my part. Like you must have seen my device.
Unfortunately, I haven't. So if you can describe it for a second and let me know, and then we can probably I can update me for 30 seconds of what it is and what your question would be.
So the device is like for the people who have a problem in the hand, especially for the gripping and holding.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no control on the finger or wrist, below elbow. For them, I made a device to hold things like spoon or brush or writing, like holding a pen and working on the computer, typing. So that device has been made through the process in Mechathon. So now the final prototype is with me, and I'm going to demonstrate on 23rd. But this is something very unique and innovative in the design, and it's very simple as well. So what do you think about patenting and all? It should go for patenting, or it should leave it like open source, or just
I guess it depends on two areas. I mean, what is your long-term philosophy for the business?
if you talk about like us personally, me, I'm not really looking into a business because yeah, it's my main purpose to develop this prototype or a design to solve the problem. So many of the people have the problem, they can't do activity of daily living because of the hand is paralyzed, but with the device they would be able to do so. So my main focus or my main thought of designing this device is just to solve the problem. Business was not the point when I designed this device, but now looking at the point that okay, because this have come up now a really nice product, and so it should reach to people who needs it. So of course there has to be some business model, um, and there has to be developed and manufactured and sold like any other product in the market. Uh, who does it? Who will do it? And who will earn the money, or whether the money aspect would be there, the business. So I'm just a little concerned about how it would move forward.
Yeah, so there could be two approaches. If you believe that you're someone who loves to innovate, to sort out and solve certain problems in the space, and that you're good at that, but you don't see yourself really getting into manufacturing and distribution and working that through, then one possibility or way of looking at it is say, okay, I innovate, make new ideas, I will patent them. I will do initial customer trials to see that this works well, and then I will try and have 10 companies make this tomorrow. Let them figure out how to distribute it. Let them figure out how to do that, and for just using my design, I get a nominal royalty or license fee, and they can probably make it maybe half the cost that I could because they have the expertise, they have the distribution network in place, and they can scale this faster than I could. Net for those companies, paying a small royalty doesn't make a big difference, and they have an option to look at this. So one model is, yes, you work on a very different level of, you see yourself as a technology business. And therefore, in that case, patenting becomes very important because the revenues that come back allow you to innovate more and create new ideas and new solutions for people that you can go back and license out. You may decide to do it, in some cases, pro bono or high royalties or lower, depending on what you believe is a combination of your social entrepreneurship thing versus running a business and how you would like to do that. If you really believe that you want to take that to production and everything else, even in that case, I would suggest that you patent it, because therefore you're then investing in a lot of other resources and you don't want it to be copied up. But then there's a lot more work to be done in each part of the business to getting it out there. Sometimes if you don't think that's where you want to go, and that's not the company you'd like to have, but you like the innovation side and that, then maybe you'd kind of structure yourself that way and find partnerships of people who manufacture in that business, who are already in that business and have the distribution network, and you become the R&D kind of side of that, and that's also perfectly acceptable.
Okay. And then what do you mean by there's a lot of work if you do it? Like, so what are the work like a patenting and manufacturing and distribution, and that's what you're talking about, the whole process?
Yeah, so I would say in either case, if you're thinking of, listen, I would say in either case, I think it's a good practice to do two things. A, to get a design registration, so that nobody, because sometimes parts can't be, something which looks in a certain way can't be patented, in which case you have a design registration. And in things, if it has a certain feature which enables it to be differentiated, maybe there's an option to patent it. And so a combination of both can be done. Hopefully with with Mr. Modi's recent announcement that this should be a little more cost effective in India and also faster. So in either case, I would do that. I'm saying after that, you need to see what kind of company would you like to be, and I think there can be two types. One is, am I an R&D think tank that starts to look at new solutions and keeps innovating, Or am I going to be someone who says I want to be a full end product company, in which case I will have to look at how I do manufacturing or outsource that, my distribution, and all parts of the business that I would need. I need funding, my working capital, all of the aspects to run a fully successful business. And I think that it depends on where you want to go, and you can take either of those routes, and they're both absolutely fine. There's no real saying that you should go A or B. It depends on what you would like to build up and how you would like to run it.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's helpful. So what if I choose, like you said at the first point, that I'm not really going to earn money out of this product, but of course I would keep on spending some money on doing some more research work. So for that, I should find some of the people who can, give some money to do further research.
I mean, for example, if you have this first product and you say, okay, I've come up with something, but to get into manufacturing it, someone's got to create tools for it, someone's going to have a network, and there's going to be an investment of 10 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, I don't know, on this area. And that's sort of crore, I don't know, and I'm not willing to put that in today. Or I don't want to go through that financing. Then you find a partner who says, okay, you take this from where this is, and for every unit you give me, 5 or 10% of the sales side of it, or whatever percentage, and that plows back into your fund of how you start to continue your developments, right?
Yeah. But for that, I have to get it patented, right?
Yeah, then you would need to patent it, because then that allows you both. So in either case of the model, you're doing it yourself and taking it to production yourself, or you're licensing it. If it's differentiated enough, I think you should look at the patents as well as the design registration. Okay. Also, at some point, when you're looking at raising funding, if things go well in your own, if the business starts to build up, and you're looking at angel investors or it's right time VCs coming in, they like to see where you're differentiated, and so therefore, in that case, the patents play a very important role in validating your differentiation on that front. Of course, that also from a market perspective needs to be seen as a differentiation, not just just a technology level, but having both together can then make it a powerful business model for you to raise money on.
Yeah. So just last quick question: how I would come to know that this is not going to be the patent, but the patent registration? So how you would come to know in the beginning?
Yeah, so what you would do is, today I was just mentioning earlier, there's very good search engines which are free. So you can type your search, gripping devices for this, holding for this, and you can do a prior art, and you would get all the patents globally that have been in that space. And then you can see, is there anything that's like that? If there's something like that, then it's unlikely that you can patent it. It also gives you a perspective to say, okay, maybe I can differentiate what I'm doing in a certain way as a result of that area, and post that, then write out the patent. So I think it'll also sometimes allow you to think a little bit differently, and also you should probably think of it much broader, right? So gripping, holding, typing, using a mouse, using a thing, you will think of 50 devices that are current or future, which could enable this to be used on, and so you create your patents in a little bit more broader manner than being very specific about just one part of it, but you base it around the first part that you have. Again, it needs to be differentiated to be patentable. So sometimes you may not be able to patent it. When it's design related, you have a design registration that you would get for it, which enables someone physically not to copy something of the same shape. But generally, design registrations people can work around. It's more for aesthetic design than functional design.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Nikram, I'd just like to add that you may have come across Neeraj, who made a presentation. He's a IP expert, and he's kind of available for you. So when you come to Bangalore, you make sure that you kind of get connected, and he is supposed to support anybody who wants support on patent issues. Okay.
Okay. And this is on 23rd, right?
Yes, we could ask him to come on the 22nd as well,
Okay.
in case you want to talk to him before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, and there's one more question from Nidrovin. I'll just read out his question. He has typed his question in the chat box. So his question is, if it is up to you, which one will you choose? Develop the product, do market research, get your IP, and then sell concept to a company. So he has given 4 choices over here, like 2 choices actually. If it's up to you, what will you do? Will you develop the product, do the market research, get your IP, and then sell the concept to a company, or take the entire building a business from sourcing to sales, operations, and everything?
I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but it's one, depending upon your personality and what you would like to do as a business. If you find you are very fond of innovation and that's what your strength is, then you should focus on that part of it. When you start to set up an entire company that needs to look at every aspect from end to end, and as you have to scale the business, 80 to 90% of your attention will start to go in building the business and scaling it and all the other aspects that would come in running a full business. And you will be diluting your effort from the research and development. So I think if you have a strong product which has a lot of complexity, on which you can continue to build a platform of products, then I think for such applications I would look at an area where you do end-to-end, because then you can really see your design through with the intention it has, and on that base platform build on a host of other things. If you feel that you're someone who likes the initial phase, gets the product out, and then likes to move on to something new and try the next challenge and work it out, then I would structure yourself around an area of looking at more the technology side and licensing models to other people than doing every aspect of the business, because the chance that your idea may not go out if your strength was not to build the entire business, then you might as well get your idea out and get some revenue for it and continue to do what you like. So I would think it would be either or. As a company matures, it may do both. It may decide that we have 1 or 2 core products that we focus on and take it forth, and then we come up with some newer ones as an outshoot, but that's not within our main business area. So you may use a licensing opportunity to get that and continue on your main core business, which you believe will give you your long-term financial benefits to keep enabling you to pump into new products.
Chetan, one more question from me. I'm sorry I sort of cut out in the middle, so you may have seen it written and have answered it, but we are facing the possibility that many, as you put it, most interested in kind of developing the technology and are not, as interested perhaps in building the whole business, and therefore are looking for licensing opportunities. Now, in a sector which is, at least in India, sort of kind of dominated, the supply side at least, by the government, I'm just sort of wondering if you can give any advice on how they might pursue finding licensing opportunities for something in the disability sector.
Yeah.
Or how even we could help in that process.
Yes, I think that what would be very helpful is to look at companies that are today in the healthcare space that starts to see disability as a business opportunity, which it is. And I think that people are underestimating currently what the possibilities are there, and what people would be willing to pay to enable them to have a better life, a better job, hold a pen better, walk better, eat better, whatever. And I think that so I think if there are the medical devices companies, medical companies that are looking at it, that can engage, and there could be an ecosystem which may be win-win. You know, here's a bunch of entrepreneurs who are technologists who love to create technology, and here are a bunch of people who would love to create an ecosystem to take those technologies all the way through. Maybe the impact could be much higher, and maybe it could be a much larger win-win situation, because as an entrepreneur sometimes it's going to take, you know, a much larger time frame to get this through. Also, I think there's a lot of opportunity from what I'm hearing and seeing is that, you know, are there specific marketplaces that can be created to only handle these things, and so therefore there are other avenues for people to look at how we can get this out on this area. And I think there also may be some products that probably, not everything, but some products could have a very large portion of rapid prototyping, in which case, especially if it's custom fit and things like that, in which case it's possible that the manufacturing of these are thought of differently, and you know, as they're required, the product is made and shipped out, and so it forms a different way of manufacturing. So I do believe while there are the traditional ways of building the entire business, and they should be done, there are also opportunities to probably rethink the way that this can be done as we look at it.
Okay. Just to sort of take that a little bit further, I mean, do you think that there might be opportunities that, you know, because they're all disability-related products, so far we've been looking at them individually, but in a sense, is there a possibility, do you think, of interest, you know, perhaps to people who might want to partner with them, of sort of collaborating and, you know, perhaps joining several of the products of a different, of a particular type together? Is that something?
Yeah, I think so. I do believe that
that out of your
there
answer.
could be a very large merit in looking at that, and that really hasn't been done. It's all been very disjoint. And if solutions can come together that can add value to each other from a technology product perspective, from a manufacturing perspective, and a distribution perspective, all three, I see significant value in how we can relook at these businesses.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I would like anyone, if there's any question from anyone's side.
I think we have time for maybe just one more question, because you know, we've taken the speaker's time a lot as well. We'll take one more question if anybody has, otherwise we'll wind up.
Yeah. So anyone? Stan, Mahmood, Nadroin, Nekram?
Just question, as I hope then you'll be able to come on one of the days to just have a quick look at the people. That would be fantastic.
And I was looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I'm traveling Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and when I told everyone I was traveling, I said if there's any way I can be of any help, I'd love to add. I think it's a great, you know, I wouldn't say business is far more than that. It's a great cause that you guys are all working on, and it's something that is going to bring about a lot of change in society. And I think it's going to be a hard area, and it's going to continue to be for a while. And so the passion that you are bringing to it, is very key, because that's what's going to take you through the tough times of building a business on this area. Take these failures that you will see as learnings. Otherwise, it's not going to really build it up. And I think that it's not just about building a business, which you guys are doing, but also about really empowering people and making change. So it's very phenomenal, and I really wish you guys all the best and success in your ventures.
Wonderful. Chetan,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking the time and answering so many critical questions. Teams, I hope all of you are getting ready. This essentially was the last webinar for this program. And, all the best to you guys for the 22nd, when we'll practice all the pitches, and then 23rd, which is the demo day. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chetan.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks a lot, Chetan.
Thanks very much. Bye.